Intersectionality, empathy, and ally.
The Brave Files are supported by Julien Desjardins, a certified strategist for small business owners. If you've already made that brave decision to start your own business, it's time to stop trying to do it all alone. Check out our show notes for more information or visit juliendesjardins.com.
You are listening to The Brave Files, real stories from people living courageously. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on Apple Podcasts. It really does make a difference, and we appreciate it. Now here's your host, Heather Vickery.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Brave Files. This is Heather Vickery. Today's guest is Anthony Clark. Anthony is a high school teacher, a community organizer, and most recently, he made a run for United States Congress. I'm super excited to have Anthony join us. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you. A pleasure to be on the show. Thank you for having me. Truly humbled, and I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So I want to jump right in here because you have such a great story and such a great impact. Can you tell us how you went from being a teacher, and you're still a teacher, right? That's not, you haven't given that up.
Correct. Still teach full time.
Full time. And you teach special ed, history, and English, right?
Yes, ma'am. Definitely.
Keeping you busy. So Anthony, can you tell us how you went from being just a teacher, and I say just in air quotes because that's a thankless and remarkable job, but from being a teacher to creating a nonprofit, becoming a community organizer? What was that process like for you?
Definitely a great question. I mean, for me, it was just about having the constant desire to wanting to do more. The family that I grew up in, my mother and father, Blanche and Ronald Clark, awesome parents, were always there for me. My grandparents helped to raise me while my parents worked, Lily G and Grandpa Chum. And growing up in that environment, it was always instilled in me that you give back. I tell everybody my grandfather was a huge Muhammad Ali fan. One of his favorite Ali quotes is, "Service to others is the rent you pay for room here on this earth." So coupling that with the willingness and the desire to wanting to work hard, it was always, how do I combine those efforts of working hard while simultaneously paying rent and giving back and not taking for granted the privileges, even as a Black male, the privileges that I have in this world. So it was always a concern of mine. I've always been the type of person where I could never truly appreciate or I guess enjoy myself in certain situations because it was always in the back of my mind or at the forefront that someone was not enjoying, someone was not eating, someone was not sleeping, someone was struggling in this world. So becoming a teacher, I served 6 years in the military, went to the Troops for Teachers program. I wanted to give back because I felt our educational system is systemically broken. So, got involved with teaching. And honestly, I just felt like I wasn't giving back enough. I felt like because the system was broken and because as a teacher, I oftentimes and, most likely work within the system, that wasn't the answer to changing things on a systemic level and truly helping people. So I thought to myself, what else can I do to, while staying in the system as a teacher, working outside of the system to apply pressure within educational institutions, but also in communities and workforces, so on and so forth. So that's why I formed the nonprofit Suburban Unity Alliance, essentially to hold people accountable, raise awareness that, though, yes, at the time it was 2016 and, we have made some progress, there's still so much work to do because there's so many individuals within our society that are still oppressed. That still don't have access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or justice. So that's why I started it. And, thankfully the community, Oak Park, Illinois, it was extremely supportive, continues to be extremely supportive of Suburban Unity Alliance. And it just snowballed from there, continued to grow. Always feeling like I'm still not doing enough. So we're constantly trying to take on challenges. And I've also started a small business. I'm the co-owner of Neighbors United LLC, where we employ at-risk youth with home care and lawn care services, trying to give back. And then, of course, it led into my candidacy for, congressional level.
Yeah, I was a proud supporter there for you. And I hope you don't quit. I hope you're planning to run again. Are you going to run again?
Definitely. No question. We plan to run in 2 years.
That's awesome. That was so much. And you said so many things that really resonated with me. I want to take a moment to pause because I'm a little humbled by you acknowledging a privilege of some sort, even given the fact that you are a Black man in the United States and not given the same privileges as everybody else, despite the fact that that should be the case. I'm really humbled by that, because the reality is at some point, there's probably almost always someone worse off than us, right?
Right. Yes, definitely.
So I think that that's something, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't do us any good to be angry. You got to have that fight in you, but feeling like the world's out to get you isn't going to make the world better. So I just think your perspective on that is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the business you started. You started this specifically, from what I know, specifically to give these kids an opportunity to find out what entrepreneurship was like and to really work and to help out the community. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Definitely. You know, I'm a proponent of, don't wait on anything that you can do for yourself. I just grew increasingly frustrated with attempting to find young adults employment because I truly believe that it's about creating opportunity. Like nothing stops a bullet like opportunity. Nothing stops negativity like opportunity. And so many of our youth fall by the wayside and fall into negativity because opportunity is cut off from them, or they don't realize that they have access or how to access it. So essentially, I grew just frustrated with, creating resumes and cover letters for my youth and, applying for jobs. And then we would realize, even though it was an entry-level position, somehow they were still looking for experience, or they wouldn't pick, our students, for the position. So I said, forget this, so we started a small lawn care business. And it just grew from there. I partnered with Tim Smith because he was doing something similar. And yes, we want to grow, critical thinking adults, global adults from where they can start at, working for Neighbors United LLC, and hopefully think about becoming their own bosses, starting their own businesses. Going out into this world. And also it provides them with, some experience that they could put on their resume. So when they apply for a different position, moving up in the world. So it's been wonderful. Yeah. Definitely.
I love it. And the kids do great work. Are these kids that you teach in your high school, or are they different kids?
These are different kids now, and actually, we call them kids. They're kids to us, but they're actually young men now. So it started with kids that I was teaching, but they graduated and they moved on. Got positions and jobs at U-Haul. I know one young man's working at U-Haul now. One young man, I believe, is working at Home Depot, so on and so forth. But these new individuals that are working for us, they're actually from the Austin community. Awesome. Young men, formerly incarcerated, was on the negative end of our legal institution. Yeah. So, but now they're doing great, and they're really growing and maturing. So and I'm learning a lot from them as well. So it's been great.
I'll bet. And so for those of you who aren't from the general area, do you want to explain what you mean when you casually say the Austin community?
Oh, so Oak Park, if you're not familiar, Oak Park is a western suburb, and Austin is now, it was the largest. It's the second largest community in Chicago. So it's an urban community, and literally one block separates Oak Park, Illinois from Austin. And it's right next door. Right. Yeah. In Austin, there's a lot of issues, great community members. They're fighting for Austin just like we fight for Oak Park. But there are a lot of issues in the Austin community due to lack of investment and lack of opportunity.
I love the way you phrase that, lack of investment and lack of opportunity. I have been really fortunate to be able to interview some powerful people, powerful as in their story is powerful. But one woman is a reentry coach for women coming out of the prison system. That was Dr. Tasha Dickerson. And that you mentioned that some of the young people, the young adults working for you have come out of the system. And then also a local man, I don't know if you know Omar Yamini, but
he's the homie. I know
right?
Omar well.
Yeah, I released an episode with Omar, and I love that I keep finding, it's kind of accidental, but I keep finding this storyline of, your story isn't pre-written. You're not stuck. You don't, just because something's always been one way, or you make a mistake, or you get into one thing, you don't have to stay there.
Definitely.
And I love that they're giving them this wonderful opportunity. I think it's awesome. And I know they do really great work. So can you tell us a little bit about, we'll go back to Suburban Unity Alliance. I'm so excited. I'm talking like a little chipmunk. My mom would say, slow down.
No worries.
What kind of work are you doing with Suburban Unity Alliance?
It's interesting when people ask that, because I guess the answer is, what work haven't we done? I feel like the systemic issues that we face in society are interconnected. So they require interconnected solutions. And, I still think that, for the most part, SUA, we're still treating symptoms. We haven't really gotten to the point where we truly attack the system. So that's why we're still working. But we've done everything from, we raise money on a monthly basis. We do small donor drives. This month we're helping a mother in need for Mother's Day. Recently, we raised $11,000 for 2 victims of sex trafficking, and I call them warriors because they're survivors. They're not victims anymore. They were in need. We've, trained individuals on helping dreamers fill out DACA renewal applications, and we've sat down with dreamers and helped them fill out their renewal applications. We purchased the church security system that was being harassed by a white supremacist organization. We purchased equipment for local cleaners that was broken into so that they could continue to operate. We partnered with the Oak Park Library to get all fees waived for nonprofit organizations. So now you can hold events at the local library for free.
Yeah,
we held a free financial literacy course for young adults and families because we believe it's important to close those financial generational gaps in the community. So, I mean, literally, we have our hand in everything. We played a role in the local elections, pushing forward equity issues, in the local races for village, school boards, library board. So it's not one thing that we do, but I think it's important. We're 100% grassroots. No one gets paid within SUA. And, we keep a zero balance in the bank account until someone comes to us, has an ask, and we raise money directly for that ask and provide that individual with that financial support as well as, social support. So it's a little bit of everything.
It's extraordinary, though. I mean, that list is remarkable.
I mean, it's about the community. I have to thank the community. Nothing could be done unless we had a supportive community, because I believe so many people want to help and so many people want to make a difference. Oftentimes, they just need someone to point them in the right direction. And I think that's what SUA does. We just provide that vehicle to not only point you in the direction, but we'll take you to the location that you need to arrive in.
I love that. I've heard you say this many times. It's one of my favorite things. You say fights are not mutually exclusive. Do you want to, speak to that for a second?
Definitely. I think, in 2018, the reason we've gotten to the point that we're at now, with our current president, with a lot of the former covert issues such as bigotry and racism that existed becoming overt and more in our face, is because we've, again, failed to eliminate systemic issues such as racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, ableism, classism, so on and so forth. Why that has happened or has not been able to be eliminated is because we're fighting individual fights. And, I guess the best way to describe it is to give an example. Say, for example, we're fighting racism. There's an opponent, in anything that you're doing. I'm a former military individual. There are opponents. There are individuals that you are facing. If your opponent can look out into the crowd and that they see that there's nothing but Black individuals, Black families marching against racism, they can marginalize that. They can say, oh, those are the only individuals. They are a minority in this society. They're the only individuals that care, that believe Black Lives Matter, that are marching against police brutality. But imagine if your opponent looks out into a crowd and they see a diverse base of individuals, not only Black, but white, Asian, Hispanic, young, old, rich, poor, male, female, they, so on and so forth. That becomes a mass movement, a transformative movement where not only those that are oppressed are marching, but allies in Verb form are getting behind and empowering those that are oppressed to make a difference. So that's essentially what that means. I would be a hypocrite to speak up and march against racism, a form of oppression, but yet ignore sexism. Though it's different, there's still some similarities because, again, it's an ism. It's a form of oppression. So I know how racism makes me feel. So I'm going to be an ally and stand behind a woman or someone who identifies as a woman and fight against sexism. So that's essentially the idea. And that's what we push out. And that's what we try to teach within Suburban Unity Alliance.
I think it's great. I remember you marching with us. We weren't in the same little group, but for the Women's March, I loved seeing you in your pink pussy hat.
Oh yeah. I was rocking. I just wanted to show solidarity, in action and symbolism, anything and everything that I could do, because I recognize that as a male inherently, and I think oftentimes we don't realize this, I don't have to be directly guilty of a crime. I don't have to be directly guilty of sexual assault or sexual harassment. As a male, inherently, I've supported rape culture. I've supported, misogyny. I've supported sexism, and oftentimes without even realizing it. So that's why it's extremely important to wake up, look ourselves in the mirror, and see how, as males, if we're talking about sexism, how we've benefited in society and how we've essentially supported the type of environments that we work and live in.
For sure. That falls into, and I hadn't intended to necessarily go down this path, but I think it's important. The whole idea of, but not all white people are racist. Not all men are sexist. Not all. But the argument to that is, until it's not a problem, all simply by default, just what you said.
Definitely. And that's why, again, I always hark back to it. It's the system. There's something called critical race theory, and essentially it teaches that the system is racist. So one individual does not have to necessarily be racist or identify as being racist to basically support that system. And that's what we have to look at across the board: racism, sexism, so on and so forth. Our systems are sexist. So I don't have to necessarily be a direct sexist or have practiced sexism to have supported sexism, just essentially by not calling it out, by allowing it to occur in my immediate environment.
Yeah. So you got to be loud. It's you don't get involved or say anything, you're not just not part of the solution. You're actually part of the problem.
Oh yeah, you're complicit in the problem, no question.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's powerful. And I will totally admit that it wasn't until the last maybe, 5 or 6 years of my life, and I'm 43, that I really fully understood that. Silver lining, the current situation's pretty awful, but the silver lining is at least now we know what we're dealing with and we can hit it with all we've got.
Definitely. And I think that's important. And, and being an ally, I think one thing that I learn something every day. I think we all learn something new every day. We can't have that, I call it that cape syndrome. Like we throw our cape on and think we're going to save someone. As allies, as an ally against sexism, I'm not going to lead women to victory. I can't, because I'm part of the problem. I have to get behind women and recognize that work has been being done. The women's suffrage movement was before my time. There have been, individual women that have lost their lives, that have sacrificed everything they've had in fights against sexism. So I'm not coming to this table with anything new. I'm not going to put my cape on and fly us to victory. I just need to shut up, listen, learn, get behind women that are in the fight and those that identify as women, and support. And that's across the board for racism, so on and so forth. We just have to be true allies, because when you're not, often you make the issue worse, or you marginalize the same direct individuals you're trying to support.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And personally, I just want to thank you for sharing that perspective, for all of the things that you do, the leading. I know that it takes a community, and I love it. Every time Anthony writes it, community unity is in all caps because of the importance of that. Spearheading that and lighting this fire in our community, which I think spreads everywhere. And that's a good lead into talk to me about deciding to run for Congress. And then what was that process like for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like there's a lot of cynicism in the world when you get into politics. But of course, our political structure is broken. It's horrible right now. So many people are jaded. But I honestly never saw myself running for office or becoming a politician. I've worked behind the scenes on issues and policies. But what happened was I was actually nominated. Like, I opened my Suburban Unity Alliance email one day, and it stated that multiple individuals in your community have nominated you to run for office.
Wow.
And initially, I balked at the idea. But again, that constant thought of having to do more, needing to do more, paying more rent, giving back to a greater extent. I sat down, prayed on it, talked to my parents, talked to my family, and I came to the conclusion that, this was a calling. This was another opportunity for me to give more, to take the message to a greater level. So that's why I accepted the nomination. I still don't consider myself the political type. I don't hold my tongue. I hold people accountable. I'm loud. I could be abrasive at times. I apply pressure.
Yeah.
But I think that's what we need, on the good side of things. I think we have a lot of abrasiveness and non-political individuals on the wrong side of things. But I think, if we could get that on our side in a sense of pushing for unity, pushing for love, pushing for supporting each other, intersectionality, I think we could get some places.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, you're right. You do not necessarily take a soft approach. And I personally really value and respect that. Sometimes you say things that get people a little riled up, but you're not here to sugarcoat anything or to pat anybody on the head. You're here to make a difference.
Definitely, and I think that's interesting. I kind of equate it to, oftentimes I have conversations where, you'll meet someone and they'll say, you know what, I'm not racist, I support Black Lives Matter, so on and so forth. But then they always come with, not always, but I'm saying like in these type of conversations, they'll say, oh, but my cousin's racist, or, I have a racist uncle, or my grandfather's extremely racist. And, that's just who they are. And, I've always been that type of person where that's the reason why we're where we are now, because we allow people just to be who they are. We make individuals comfortable, and we make it acceptable in a sense in the past to be covert or overt, So for me, I'm not doing this work to make friends. Like, I'm not doing this work to be praised. I'm not doing this work to be put on a pedestal. If I piss people off, if I, end up incarcerated, or, I did almost lose my job this past year,
I remember that.
It doesn't matter, because it's not about me. It's not about making friends. Real work, real revolutionary work where you're trying to change the systems, that's uncomfortable. That costs, whether it's a physical or emotional. Exactly. So we have to get out of that mindset. And I'm not talking about everyone, but I think even the people that are like on our side, in a sense, sometimes think, well, I'm going to march, but we have to make sure the march is friendly and everybody's singing and laughing and taking selfies. And that's not always going to be, what we need. Sometimes it's going to be down and dirty. People are going to get hurt. People are going to hurt people's feelings. And, that's just how I am. So, so be it. I've had my tire slashed. I've been threatened. It doesn't matter. The work's too important. And if it costs me my safety or whatever, that's what I'll pay.
Does it feel brave to you?
No, not necessarily. I don't look at myself as someone who's brave. I just look at myself as someone who's tired. I look at myself as someone who doesn't have the privilege just to accept what it is. There have been extremely brave people before me, and there are extremely brave people currently in this world. I'm still within the system. Like, I haven't given everything, that I can give yet. So I don't really consider myself brave. I just consider myself tired. I'm just tired of how this world is right now, and I just don't have the privilege to accept it. That's all.
That's something. Maybe Rosa Parks is the only other person I've ever heard say that. Like, I was just tired of sitting in the back. Like, I don't have to stand for that shit anymore, right?
Right.
That is really, really, really powerful. Tired of dealing with it, and you don't have the privilege to accept it. I'm in awe of the work that you do, what I can give to it. I'm always so proud to be part of it. I never feel like there's enough, never enough time, never enough money. I don't know. I have too many kids, and I don't have too many. I have 4, but I feel like I can't give enough, and that eats at me. And I just love everything you do.
Yeah, but no, we all, again, it takes a village. We all play a role. One of my favorite quotes is from Martin Luther King Jr. And he says, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. And I think we all, have to look ourselves in the mirror, identify our strengths and weaknesses, what we can do. And as long as whatever we can do, we're moving it forward, that's what matters. Not everybody's going to be Anthony. Not everybody's going to be, so on and so forth. You just have to be yourself, but move forward and what that means.
Do what you can do, people. I love that. If you take nothing else from this episode, identify what you can do and then freaking do it.
Right.
Anthony, what's been the biggest struggle for you throughout the last, 2-3 years?
That's an interesting question. And I think it's interesting. And, I'm a blunt person and transparent as possible. I expect, pushback, and I expect a lot of vitriol from individuals that do not believe in, diversity, do not believe in unity, so on and so forth. But it's interesting to see at times and to have to deal with the individuals or the allies that are seemingly on your side or identify as being on your side. But immediately when you make them uncomfortable, or they become uncomfortable, or something occurs that they don't agree with, it's not on their time. It's interesting to get pushback from them. People that you felt were allies or that were supportive. I think that's been the most difficult part of this journey, in a sense, to not only have to deal with the opposition, but to deal with allies or those directly in the same fight that are either, fighting for position. Because for some people, let's be honest, it's a hustle. Some people aren't necessarily in it to truly make a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in it to, uplift themselves, to gain position. So dealing with jealousy or dealing with someone who, feels like, their name needs to be at the top of the marquee, or, dealing with someone who, hey, you're making me uncomfortable now, well, this is the fight, so to have that pushback, in a sense, and to often, when I'm an ally, I listen. I don't have the answers. Like, I have thoughts. I can share my ideas.
Sure.
But if a woman shares something with me, or someone who identifies as a woman shares something with me about sexism or misogyny, I'm going to honor that. I'm not going to question that. I'm going to learn from that. But it's just interesting to me to at times to be sharing things in regards to racism or forms of oppression that I face as a Black male, and to have white allies, for example, question it. Or say that I have to prove it, or to think that somehow they know better because they read about it in a book or watched the documentary.
Yeah.
So, that, I mean, it's not difficult, but that becomes frustrating, because it's like, well, damn, like, we already on this battlefront, but now we have infighting, and we have to fight our own side, just do the silly stuff like that. So I think that's been the most difficult part of it, in a sense. But again, it comes with the territory. So it is what it is.
It's kind of amazing to me, though, how often we find these quote unquote open-minded people who are not open-minded if it's anything out of their normal or what they expect to be reality.
Correct. Definitely. It's very interesting to see that. But again, that's part of the human condition. It's part of human nature at times, because, if you have privilege within a certain situation, you don't know what it means to be desperate, to be tired, in a sense of like, I've had enough, So to tell someone who's facing a form of oppression, I agree with you, I support you, but now's not the time. Or how about we do it a different way?
When is the time?
Right. Like, when is the time? And what way is there to do it? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, I mean, if you think about the kneeling of Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed and other individuals, how, they've had, of course, the opposition had an issue with it, but they even have people that say, well, I support Black Lives Matter, but do you have to kneel? It's just
Does it have to be during a football game? I recently had that conversation with a friend, but don't mess with my sports. That's where I go to relax.
Right.
My argument is, if they've got a platform,
definitely,
it's criminal to not use a platform to push something forward, and so get over it.
Exactly. And I find it extremely funny, in a sense, how so many people say sports shouldn't involve politics, where if you think about throughout history, sports have been inherently political. Like, if you think about the Roman Colosseum, when you had gladiators in the ring battling to the death, that was a sporting event, and that was essentially made and created to distract the people. To keep
so they didn't know what was happening.
Exactly, to keep them from thinking about being hungry and the poverty and filth and so on and so forth, and inequities. Sports are meant to distract you from what's going on in society, so they're inherently political. So I just find it interesting how people say, keep politics out of sports, when that's impossible.
That is such an awesome perspective. I know the friend I was just mentioning is a regular listener, and I love you out there. You know who you are, but this is going to be fun to talk about afterwards.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid of the uncomfortable conversation. I am loud too. I put myself out there. I can remember, when I first came out, and started really getting very active in the LGBTQ community. I've always been active in almost every other community, but I just didn't have the exposure. Some loved ones saying, oh, but what if it affects your business? Like, let me tell you how much I don't care.
Right.
I do not need or want the money of somebody who has a problem with what I have to say. Like,
exactly.
I'm not afraid of that. So we're coming to the end of this show. And one of the questions that I love, and you've done, so many amazing things. Two things. One, I want to know if one thing stands out as, that brought you the most joy, or that you found was the most remarkable. And then two, how do you stop and honor and celebrate each of these things you do, from the small thing? I know last week you stood on a street corner to save somebody's things after they were evicted, so they come pick it up. That to, really big, extraordinary things, big fundraising efforts. How do you honor and celebrate that?
Well, first, for the first question, you said, well, I guess what's been the most joy, or and honestly, of course, helping individuals, the intrinsic reward of knowing that you help someone. But at the end of the day, when I'm sitting down, the biggest joy I have, honestly, is seeing the pride on my parents' faces. My grandparents are no longer here, God rest their soul. But Ron and Blanche, they mean so much to me as my parents. They sacrificed essentially their entire lives to provide me with more, to provide me with better. They've given everything to me. So just to see, that joy in their face, to see the pride that they have, to know that I'm their son and that they're proud that I'm their son, that means everything to me, and so I think that's the biggest, they were involved. They're involved. They've always been supportive. They always come and show up and help. And even with the mother that was evicted, my father came by and helped, and we helped move her things. So just to see that. And then in regards to celebrating, honestly, I don't. I don't have that in me. I'm not built like that. Like, I don't think I've really done anything. I think I think it's what are awards or rewards, like, really, at the end of the day, if nothing's really changed on a systemic level. Like, I was Villager of the Year in Oak Park, but Oak Park still has systemic issues. So Park still has systemic oppression. There's people that are being forced out of the community. So what did my Villager of the Year award get me, really, besides a pat on the back? So. But
I don't disagree with that, though. But I will say, and for me, it's like celebration. And I sort of mean, like, just even pausing to say, okay, that was good. That worked. That thing we did made some tiny bit of difference. And not necessarily just for you, but for the people who are in the trenches with you. And the fact of the matter is, you don't just go from A to Z, right? Like, you won this award. No, it's not fixed, but we're inching our way there. If you don't ever do the thing, you're never going to get the end result. So you deserve a little bit of a moment just to say, okay, well, that one got done, and we did a good job, and now we're going to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. I understand that. And, I do recognize, of course, when something went well and when something worked, and, evaluated how can we do better next time, and so on and so forth. But, we just keep chugging along.
Keep doing the thing.
Yes,
so other than your own charity, nonprofit that you started, can you share with us what your favorite charitable organization is to support?
That's a great question. And again, I guess I may share something a tad controversial, but I mean, for me, I guess when it comes to charity, I'm a staunch supporter of Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
I think,
me too.
So that's a good charity, because I do consider it a charity, and, with the work that they do. But beyond that, it's interesting to me because I feel like so many charities they're extremely large. So to the point where I don't really donate to charities. I honestly don't. Like, I do the work in the community. I'll donate to an individual, but it's hard for me to give to, like, the Red Cross or, because there's so much overhead in a sense. So for me, it's like, if I give $20, by the time my $20 gets to the person or the family or the individual that is supposed to help, it's only like $2 left, because you're paying for CEOs, you're paying for, whoever the hell else. So for me, I don't really get into that, like, charity circle. And but Black Lives Matter, definitely, because I have a relationship with them. My cousin, she runs a program, UMJ Medics, they do a lot of work within the South Side of Chicago, teaching kids how to treat gunshot wounds and stuff, so on and so forth. So, like, those smaller organizations, Austin Community, the Westside Health Authority, Build, Institute of Nonviolence Chicago, those are organizations that I support. But, the larger charities I kind of stay away from.
It's all right.
Because I just feel like at the end of the day, your money's not really going to what you want it to go to.
Well, there were no parameters on that question, so it's all good. And I don't necessarily always think that when I say support, it necessarily means financial support. There are a lot of different ways to support.
Right, definitely.
And I'm not surprised, right? Of course, I would expect from you, and I love hearing from you, that you want to support small local organizations because you're all about serving this community and this community stronger. And what I'm hoping people who are listening who aren't in this community will take away is that you can make that difference in your community. And I'm all for, finding the local organizations, the local people who are doing the work and putting the effort forth and helping them continue to do that. So I love that. Anthony, will you share your 3 words with us one more time?
Intersectionality, empathy, and ally.
Will you share a little bit about intersectionality for the listeners, please?
Yes, intersectionality, essentially that ties into, that saying fights are not mutually exclusive.
Right, yeah.
That's what being a true ally is about in verb form, not in noun form. In action, you get behind individuals and their direct fight against their direct form of oppression. And then in turn, they will get behind you in your direct fight against your form of oppression. So you have to be intersectional, work with each other, respect each other, and create mass movements. Because it's not just about your exclusive fight.
Yeah.
We have to be inclusive. So that's how I describe intersectionality. The saying I use is, if you look out the window and you see your neighbor in need, but you don't help them, you don't open your door, it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen the next day, but eventually you're going to be in need, but there's going to be no neighbors help left to open the door and help you.
Yeah.
Empathy, again, I think, most people understand empathy in a sense is, in order to tap into intersectionality, you have to be able to, in somewhat, put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's not going to be possible to recreate what somebody else goes through, but be empathetic and recognize that you have privilege. No matter who you are, there's some level of privilege that exists, and understand that. And you don't have to question, and you don't have to tell someone else to prove it. Just respect them and recognize what they go through is important and that they need support. And then ally, again, I tell people allyship. What does that really mean? Because I think a lot of people call themselves allies and they're not truly allies, because, again, being an ally is not a noun. You just can't call yourself an ally, attend a march, take a picture, get some likes and pat yourself on the back. You have to truly be active. It has to be an ally in verb form. You can't put your cape on. You have to listen and be supportive. So that's how I define that as well.
That's extraordinary. That's a beautiful way to describe it. I hope everybody is listening and taking notes and going out and doing it. Anthony, I want to thank you so, so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. I truly appreciate it. It's my honor.
So everyone, Anthony reminds us that we are all part of a very large puzzle. Together, we can come together, we can be loud, we can make really big changes in our community, and we have to pair up. In fact, it's a duty, and that duty falls on all of us. So we have to go out and do the thing. So thank you all for being here with me. Get out in your communities, support them, help them rise up. And if the show resonates with you, please share it with a friend. I would appreciate it. So this is Heather Vickery reminding you to choose bravely. The Brave Files is also supported by Frizz Marketing, a boutique marketing firm offering tailored services to small businesses and nonprofits. Frizz helps you distill your authentic story and get in front of the right audience. Contact them today at frizzmarketing.com.
Thank you for listening to The Brave Files. Be sure to visit thebravefilespodcast.com to access the show notes and discover fantastic bonus content. Music composed and produced by Matt Lewis of Union Music, LLC.